What's up, everyone? Shaan here. This will probably be the most important video that I ever make. This is something that I don't share about my business building journey often, but it's regarding panic disorder. This is something that affects millions of people, not just entrepreneurs. And I think it's a topic that gets pushed under the rug a little bit too often. I want to be able to share my experience with this because I know there are people out there who may suffer from the same disorder or maybe don't necessarily know what's going on and want to have somebody in their corner who understands what they're going through. And so just a disclaimer, this is not medical advice. So, if this is something that is triggering or something that you are dealing with, please reach out and get some help. I will also be attaching resources for you at the end of this video and in the comments. So panic disorder, it runs in my family. It's like this weird heirloom that's been gifted. I guess gifted is not the right word. It's been passed on for generations and generations. And, I remember being a kid, seeing a bunch of family members who were dealing with this, but not necessarily knowing what it was. And also me not really understanding what was happening around me. My brother, as far as my immediate family, deals with bipolar disorder. I have tons of cousins that also deal with schizophrenia, and uncles and grandparents who have also dealt with the same thing. I'll never forget my first panic attack. I was living in Austin, and I had just been a part of a startup exit. And so the weird thing is things were actually going really good. I was getting a golden parachute from the startup, and I had enough runway to be able to support me and my family over the next year. All I was focusing on at the time was just bettering my skills to be able to figure out what was next for me in my career. But then it happened. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was getting really dizzy. I was sweating. I was shaking. My heart was racing. I had no idea where it was. My chest felt tight. I was pretty much convinced that I was dying. And I think the scariest part about it was it was just a normal day. I was doing regular things on a regular day. And I think that's what's interesting about panic attacks. They're not necessarily convenient, right? They kind of happen out of nowhere. So Kiara, my fiance, took me to the ER immediately. And I finally got my diagnosis, and I was really confused. And at the time I was diagnosed with panic disorder, I had no idea what it was. But when I took the EKG, it came back negative. And I just remember being in that hospital and being like, what is going on? What am I suffering through? These doctors don't know anything. Something is definitely going on with my heart. Once the dust settled a little bit, I was able to sort of come out of that confusion, but it was something that I dealt with for several weeks after that, right? I continued to have chest pains. I continued to be confused, anxiety through the roof. And I was really on edge, which in hindsight, that's probably what made it worse. And so after that, I went to primary care immediately. After I had got diagnosed with panic disorder, I was able to get on some medications, some SSRIs. It definitely made me feel better, but it's still something that I battle with daily. Now, let's talk about how this makes an impact when you're actually running a business or working a job or a full-time employee. Imagine being in the middle of a client presentation and it just comes out of nowhere. You feel your chest tighten, or you have to excuse yourself from the meeting out of nowhere. That's happened more times than I can count, where an attack just feels like it's coming on. There are days that I'm doing my best work, landing new clients, hitting all deadlines, really feeling on top of the world, like nothing is wrong. But then there are just days where getting out of bed, taking a shower, even opening up my laptop is just completely overwhelming. And I think there's always that constant fear of, when is my next panic attack coming? That can be paralyzing. So some of the biggest challenges that I've experienced as far as my business impact, managing client expectations and client meetings during high anxiety periods, maintaining this professional image when internally I'm struggling mightily. And I think also the hardest thing that doesn't get talked about is balancing that self-care with the business demands. The last part, which is really important, is making really big and crucial decisions when my anxiety is at its worst and clouding my judgment. Over time, I've developed, over the last years, some coping strategies to be able to handle a lot of these situations so that way it doesn't take over my life and I'm able to fight back. I think some of the most important things are building a strong support system. That can include family or friends to be able to support you, a therapist who specializes in panic attacks, a business mentor who understands mental health struggles just like you do, and also being really transparent with your team. I think it's hard to do that in a business setting, but if you do that, it really opens up the doors to really important conversations and helps you be able to attack things knowing that your team has your back. And there's some like emergency protocols that I put in place where my anxiety or my panic attacks are at its worst. There's having pre-written emails that you could easily send off when there is a situation. I always build buffer times in between my busy schedule, so that way I have some time to decompress and focus on myself. This is something that I don't understand why people don't do more, but breathing exercises. Once you are able to hone in and focus on your breath, that is one of the most X factor things that I've ever taught myself. And then there's the self-care piece of it, which is regular therapy sessions, medication management with the doctor that you trust, prioritizing sleep as much as you can, and then setting boundaries with work and being okay with those boundaries. And some other things that I do, journaling, meditation, a lot of those things can have a really big impact on the long term. Maybe you don't feel it day to day, but it does make an impact as you continue to put the efforts in those coping mechanisms. So I think for anyone that's out there that's dealing with something like this, here's what I want you to know. First, you're not broken. There's tons of people that deal with this, and it doesn't define your ability to be successful. The way I look at it, in fact, managing this has given me a lot of tools to be able to handle a lot of difficult situations in life and in my business. And so the way I look at it is it's my superpower, and how can I harness my superpower? I think the second thing is just be honest with yourself and recognize that there is a problem and that you need to be able to focus on getting better at it, but also just treat yourself nicely. Have some compassion for yourself. When I started to be a little bit more open, I randomly saw support from people that I didn't expect. That can be really important for your growth. I think the third thing is make sure you create systems that work for you. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole. Meditation works for me, but maybe going on long walks works for you. I think the most important thing is create your own way of doing things, because you are you. You're your own person, and you're going to be different as far as your coping mechanisms compared to somebody else. The last thing is invest in help. There's plenty of help that's out there, both for your mental health and for your business. The point of that is to invest in your well-being and in your success. And by actually seeking out that help, you're doing that for yourself. So I know this video is super intense and maybe a little bit different than what you expected, but this topic is important to me. And my goal is to be able to share this story so that way it could potentially help someone out there who may be dealing with the same thing. Feeling less alone and more understood can be so worth it for someone that's out there. And I want to be able to give that to somebody. Running a business or just living life can be as difficult enough. And being able to add the stressors of a really intense job or running a business or running multiple can really send you down a spin zone. But it is possible to manage both successfully. What you have to understand is it requires patience, some self-care, and some compassion for yourself, and just to always understand that you're continuing to grow. So if this resonated with you, give this video a thumbs up, consider subscribing. And if you have any experiences with something like this yourself, please comment. I would love to hear it and be able to respond in ways that I could potentially help. I've included some hotlines, some mental health hotlines, as well as some resources and business resources that some people in my network have used, including myself. And I will include that in the comments for you to be able to check out. The one thing to remember is that you are not alone. And there are people out there who are willing to support you and readily available to support you. You just have to be able to put yourself out there. And it can be difficult to do that. But once you get past it, the benefits are endless. And so I just want you to remember that. Appreciate your time, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Cheers.